on the Bosporus. We're on the waterway going north, heading towards the Black Sea. And what comes to mind for me is the old ballad of Rudyard Kipling, "East is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet." What comes to mind is east is east and west is west, and the twain are meeting, because we're in a unique place in the world where east does meet west, where east, Asia, and west, Europe, come together, bounded by the Bosporus. The Bosporus is part of a water body that connects the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, and it is a place of history, really from time immemorial, from mythological times until today, until this very day. It remains an absolutely central part of the human story and central part of globalization. When one enters the Turkish Straits from the Aegean Sea, from the Eastern Mediterranean, one passes through a narrow waterway known in ancient Greek times as the Hellespont and today as the Dardanelles. And passing through the Dardanelles, one reaches a sea, an inland sea called the Sea of Marmara. Connected to the Dardanelles, one can pass through the Sea of Marmara, Greek for marble because of marble quarries in the region, and then through the Sea of Marmara into where we are today, the Bosporus. The Bosporus Straits continue on to the Black Sea, and in the Black Sea open up to the countries surrounding the Black Sea. If we were to continue in a clockwise direction as we reach the Black Sea, we would pass Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, and of course the northern edge of Anatolia of Turkey. And at the mouth of the Bosporus, at the place where the Sea of Marmara enters into the Bosporus on the way to the Black Sea, that of course is where Istanbul is located and where urban life has been centered for 2,700 years, since the founding of the original colony of Byzantium by the Greeks around 700 BCE, and then becoming the capital of the Roman Empire, and then the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire, then the Ottoman Empire, and now the capital of the Republic of Turkey. One can imagine East and West joined together, and Mediterranean behind me and the Black Sea ahead of me joined together, that this is really one of the most important places of bridging civilizations and making trade possible in the entire world. It's sometimes cautioned, geography is not destiny, but when you're here, you feel it's pretty close to destiny. It is not an accident that Byzantium, Constantinople, Istanbul, that city of 2,700 years, is one of the greatest cities in the world. Even if that geography was not destiny, it made it possible to play a central role in history as the bridge of Asia and Europe, the bridge of the Black Sea region, and even beyond the steppes of Eurasia and the Mediterranean. And for the countries of the Black Sea, and especially for Russia, the Black Sea connected through the Bosporus, the Sea of Marmara, the Dardanelles, the Aegean, the Eastern Mediterranean, all the way across the Mediterranean to the Straits of Gibraltar and out to the Atlantic. This is an opening to the entire world. And so this waterway is truly a phenomenal connector throughout history. and it is the place of legend and the place of profound history. Start with the legend, Bosporus. What is the Bosporus? Bosporos, ox crossing or cow crossing. In English, we would say it's Oxford. The same, the fording by the ox. But what is it in Greek mythology, the Bosporos? It comes from an ancient story recounted by Hesiod, recounted by the great playwrights of Greece, of a beautiful Io, a mortal woman, and Zeus fell madly, passionately in love with her. Depending on the version of this story, either Zeus turns Io into an ox so that he can hide her from his wife Hera, jealous Hera, or Hera does the deed. But Io becomes an ox, and Hera torments her with the gadflies chasing her throughout the region. And in the mythology, she crosses these straits and makes her way back to human form when she is enabled once again by secrets told to her by Prometheus and made back into a human form in the European side. But her crossing of the straits is the ox crossing, the Bosporos, the Oxford, and gives the name to this place. And similarly, the straits that enter from the Aegean towards the Sea of Marmara, the Hellespont, or known today as the Dardanelles, is also from ancient Greek mythology. Helle is a princess who plays a major role in the story of Jason and the Argonauts. Jason, a Greek hero who sails up these waterways into the Black Sea in search of the Golden Fleece, and Helle, who drowns in the waters that would become known as the Hellespont. That's the mythology, but the reality is also mind-boggling, because these waters have played a central role in history, in economy, of course, in connecting East and West, because from ancient times, this has been a terminus of the great Silk Roads that brought the goods from the East to this place, what would be Byzantium, and then to Constantinople, and to Istanbul still later. But it has also been a crossing point for warring forces. And one of the most famed crossings of these waters of the Bosporus was by Darius, recounted in Herodotus's histories. Darius strung boats across the Bosporus so that he could cross with his troops from Asia to Europe in the late part of the 6th century BCE. And then still later, about 30 years later, as Xerxes was trying to conquer Greece in the battles that would be the decisive victory of Greece over Persia in 480 and 479. Once again, the Persian forces crossed the waterways, this time at the Hellespont in the Dardanelles, to make the way from Asia into Europe en route to Greece. It's said that when the Greeks won the great battle at Salamis in 480 BCE, Xerxes turned tail and fled back to Asia because he was scared that he would be trapped with his troops and unable to cross the Dardanelles from Europe back to Asia, that the Greeks would be able to block his re-entry to his Asian homeland and Asian base. So he fled, leaving behind his general Mardonius, who then lost the final battle of the war in 479, the Battle of Plataea. And this waterway therefore playing a decisive role in the Persian attack and indirectly in the Greek victory over the Persians as Xerxes fled after the defeat at Salamis and returned with most of the troops and the fleet back to Asia. Well, throughout history, this waterway has been contested. It's clearly a strategic waterway. And with the rise of Russia, the battles between Russia and the Ottoman Empire on the one hand, and then later between Russia and the French and the British played a major role, with these waterways playing an important role, because if the waterway could be controlled, this would control decisively the balance of power between Russia and competitor nations. And so the Bosporus and the Black Sea played a huge role in many battles of the 18th century and quite a central role in the Crimean War of the 19th century. In the Crimean War, Russia was asserting its powers over a declining Ottoman Empire, and Britain and France were trying to bolster the Ottoman Empire and contain Russian rising power. And the British had a pretty crazy idea, I believe, which was that Russia was threatening Britain's empire in India, that Russia would invade India from Central Asia, and that Russia needed therefore to be contained. This is one of the problems when you're a global empire. Everything looks like a potential direct enemy to you, and Britain became Russia's foe, wanting to defeat Russia at all costs and protect the jewel of the British Empire, India, from the possibility, however remote, that Russia would threaten India through Central Asia. And those were the roots of the Crimean War, because when Russia made some claims against the Ottoman state in the early 1850s, Britain and France told Russia to stand down. And when Russia actually did stand down, returning some of its troops from the Danubian principalities, that is the Wallachia and Moldavia, right at the mouth of the Danube, and Russia retreated, the British had the idea, now we'll really teach them a lesson. So where we are, the British Navy went through the Bosporus, went into the Black Sea, and decided it would capture the naval base of Russia at Sevastopol. And between 1853 and 1856, the British and the French besieged the Russian base when Russia threatened the Ottoman Empire, a declining power, by stationing troops in the Danubian principalities, Wallachia and Moldavia. The British and the French said, we'll teach Russia a lesson, and told Russia to stand down, which in fact Russia did. It withdrew the troops, and what happened next was, of course, rather astounding. The British were unrelenting, and even as Russia pulled back, the British sent the Navy through the Bosporus, just where we are today, and the British and the French besieged the Russian base at Sevastopol in the Crimea. The Sevastopol had been Russia's naval base in the Black Sea since 1783, but the British and the French were going to teach Russia a lesson. The war was bloody. It lasted from 1853 to 1856. Eventually, the siege did bring about the fall of Sevastopol, and Britain and France demanded that Russian warships in the Black Sea should be disbanded. That lasted for a short period of time because soon enough France decided that Russia actually was more of an ally than a foe. Just a few years later, when the rise of the new German state threatened France, and then France looked to Russia not as an enemy, but now as an ally, possibly a balancer against the rising German power, and the Russian fleet returned to Sevastopol, where it has remained to this day. Now, I recount that story of the Crimean War from 1853 to 1856, not only because this waterway was decisive, but because unfortunately we're in the second Crimean War with the war in Ukraine. Once again, great powers are contesting, in effect, power and control over the Black Sea region. And once again, now it's the United States and its allies, still including the United Kingdom and including France and other powers who are challenging Russia and engaging in what I believe can be called the Second Crimean War, this horrible war in Ukraine. It shows that in contested territories of such significance, what one geostrategist in the United States, Zbigniew Brzezinski, called a geographical pivot, a place of such significance that it determines power on the global stage. We feel that the Bosporus has that role. And again, east is east and west is west. And we should recall that Kipling, though often quoted as concluding that the two shall never meet, here we have a place where they do meet, but even more importantly, let us really recall what Kipling said in the Ballad of East and West, because it's very relevant for the Bosporus and very relevant for our quest for sustainable development. He said, "East is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet, till earth and sky stand presently on God's great judgment seat. But there is neither east nor west, border nor breed nor birth, when two strong men stand face to face, though they come from the ends of the earth." What the ballad is really about is connecting brave people across the world. It's not that the two can never meet. Asia and Europe do meet here. This has made this place a center of world trade and commerce, carrying the products of Asia to Europe and the products of Europe to Asia, making the Black Sea a breadbasket even for the ancient world, for ancient Greece in the 5th century BCE. But the two sides can meet not just in war, but in commerce and in ideas, because this has been a bridge of civilizations as well, a meeting point, a place to learn, and especially today, a place that remains contested, remains a point that can ignite massive conflict, but more especially a point where it is essential that we find peace, that Europe and Asia cooperate, that we stop the battles and the wars along this waterway, and we view this waterway as a life-saving source, as a trade route, and truly as a bridge of cultures. So I'm always amazed to be in this place, in the Bosporus, in this connector of two parts of the Eurasian world. And though we're here at a time of war, I think we need to remember that this must be and can be a bridge of peace. By the end of the 17th century, the early years of the 1700s, at least in retrospect, the Ottoman Empire was in decline. And in just a little more than 2 centuries, the Ottoman Empire itself would end at the end of World War I. What happened? What was the cause of a decline from an empire of such power and reach? Of course, those are great questions of history because many deep forces were at play. But let's try to understand some of those forces. One fundamental force, slowly moving but absolutely powerful, was the rise of power, prosperity, military might of Europe. And I think it's fair to say that a fundamental driver of Europe's rising power from the 1500s onward were the 2 events that Adam Smith called the 2 most significant events in human history, the discovery of the sea routes from Europe to the Americas by Columbus, and the discovery of the sea routes around the Cape of Good Hope from Europe to Asia by Vasco da Gama, the first in 1492, the second in 1498. The world was opened for the Europeans, and the fact that the Europeans would colonize the so-called New World, new to them, not so new to the indigenous peoples of the Americas, gave tremendous power and dynamism to Europe. And that showed up in economy, in demography, and in military might. Not all at once, but over the course of centuries. And that meant that when the Ottomans confronted the Holy Roman Empire in 1526 in the first siege of Vienna, that was a close balance of power, even with the Ottomans so far from their home base. But by the second siege of Vienna in 1683, Europe was a much more formidable foe at that point, and the fundamental balance of economy, demography, military might was turning. Those forces by themselves were probably not enough to explain the decline and then disappearance of the Ottoman Empire. And I would name at least 3 more important facts. The first was the rising power of the Ottoman neighbors, and the most significant certainly was the rising power of the Russian Empire, because Russia and the Ottomans would compete for territory and for control for the coming centuries. And the Ottomans would increasingly be on the losing end of that struggle. So the rising power of Russia was a very practical fact. It was made even more practical by the fact that the Ottoman Empire was a multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire. It was Muslim ruled, but many of the subjects, including in the Balkans regions, were Orthodox Christians. And of course, many were Greek-speaking or Slavic-speaking. And this meant that the Ottoman control was, in some sense, more tenuous than otherwise, and Russia used its increasing power to claim a kind of protectorship or control over the Slavic peoples of the Ottoman Empire and over the Christian, especially the Orthodox Christian peoples of the Ottoman Empire. So Russia consciously engaged in a culture struggle as well as in a military and geopolitical competition with the Ottoman Empire. But I would say that in the 19th century, 2 absolutely fundamental dynamic forces took hold that accelerated the dramatic shift of power to the advantage of the Ottoman Empire's foes or competitors. One was industrialization. Industrialization really began in the late 18th century with James Watt's steam engine and the ability to put new machines, so whether it's spinning jennies or other factory machinery connected to this new steam power, or the use of the steam power for transportation in rail or ocean steamers and in military application. Industrialization began in Britain. It gave Britain an enormous advantage in power. It created essentially the global British Empire in the 19th century. But industrialization diffused from Britain geographically. It diffused from west towards the east. And that meant that the Ottoman region was a latecomer to industrialization. This meant that inevitably the Ottoman rulers' military power was increasingly at a major disadvantage to the powers of the European early industrializers. The second fundamental dynamic of the 19th century was the arising of national consciousness. The idea that governance should be according to nation, not precisely defined, but nation meaning some combination of religious profession and language. But culture and politics should align. Multi-ethnic states were challenged everywhere, but Ottoman, being a multi-ethnic state, which we could admire tremendously today for that very reason, came under siege the same way that the Habsburg Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and then the Austrian Empire as of the 19th century, and then the Austro-Hungarian Empire as of the middle of the 19th century, was under siege by all the nations, the ethnic groups, the Slavic groups, the different linguistic groups that said we should have our sovereignty. And so the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg Empire, the other multi-ethnic empires faced an assault from within of nationalism. And the Ottomans felt this in war after war after war internally, rebellions that were then supported by outside powers who swept in to enable parts of the Ottoman Empire to extricate themselves from Ottoman rule. A clear and vivid case of this is the War of Independence of Greece from 1821 to 1830. The Greeks, Greek-speaking, Christian Orthodox, rebelled in the early 1820s. The Ottomans were suppressing the Greeks by the middle of the 1820s, saying, no, we were part of the empire, and putting down the Greek rebellion. But then the British and the French, for their own geopolitical purposes, in part perhaps responding to public opinion, in part creating public opinion of a kind of war party frenzy in the early days of tabloid newspapers in the 1820s, swooped in, defeated the Sultan's navy, and Greece achieved its independence with the support of Britain and France in 1830. And Greek independence, of course, gave a vivid imagination across the Ottoman regions for independence of different peoples within the Ottoman Empire. By the 1870s, the Balkans were at war, and countries like Bulgaria were winning their independence, this time with Russian support and other outside support, and the Ottoman Empire was being picked apart piece by peace. Internal rebellion supported by outside power. A similar and very important event, and very much an event that reverberates till today, was the Crimean War of 1853 to 1856. Now, that's a war that didn't directly involve the Ottomans in the actual battle, because that was a war between France and Britain on one side and Russia on the other side. But it began in part because of the nationalist pressures within the Ottoman Empire and Russia's decisions to utilize those pressures to Russia's own geopolitical advantage. Russia made claims that with the declining power of the Ottomans, Russia should have more say and more control over the Orthodox Christian subjects of the Ottoman Empire, especially in the Holy Land, in the today's Israel and Palestine, but also in the Balkan regions, in the so-called Danubian principalities. When Russia intervened, moving troops into the lower Danube, Britain and France saw their chance to assert their power, not so much against the Ottomans, but against the Russians, and moved their naval fleets in, and what ensued was a 3-year war, 1853 to 1856, pitting Russia on one side against France and Britain on the other. But the Ottomans were caught up in the war. They actually borrowed a lot of money to finance the military, with a big borrowing in 1854, and that was part in all of the wars of raising the debt of the empire, squeezing the finances of the empire, adding another force pulling the empire apart and weakening the empire, because rising European power, rising Russian power, rising nationalism within the multi-ethnic state, a relative decline of economic and military strength because of Europe's industrialization. Added to that was higher and higher public debt as the Ottoman Empire tried to cope, tried to borrow in order to pay for the military or modernize the state. As is often the case, this was not an empire that sat still. This was not a backward, forlorn place. This was a place where the rulers were trying to make reforms, trying to make constitutional change, trying to upgrade the economy, to engage in international trade, to build infrastructure. And a process of reform called the Tanzimat engaged the Ottoman Empire in the middle of the 19th century. There were constitutional reforms in the 1870s, some short-lived because the Sultan then again tried to centralize and maintain power against a rising parliament. This was an empire in distress, as it had lots of powers increasingly surrounding it, increasingly making claims on territory, on debt, on control, on geopolitics. And Britain, with its expanding empire, was demanding more and more geographic control throughout this region, especially when Britain took effective control of Egyptian politics in the 1880s. By the early years of the 20th century, the Ottoman Empire had defaulted on its debts, had shrunken in size, would face yet more wars of national independence in the early years of the 20th century, in the Balkan Wars, and then in World War I, in a kind of act of desperation, the Ottomans sided with the Prussian or German state and with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, with the Habsburg Empire, on what would be the losing side of World War I. And at the end of World War I was also the end of the Ottoman Empire. World War I, remember, was a war that ended multiple dynasties. The Romanovs in Russia, the rule of the Prussians on the losing side of the German state, the Austro-Hungarian or Habsburg rule, and the Ottoman rule, all four came crashing down at the end of World War I, and the Republic of Turkey was declared in 1923. So from the gates of power of a glorious empire, a glorious palace, a magnificent grounds of Ottoman culture and might of the middle of the 15th century, a story of rise and fall that we know to be so much part of history.